Have you ever wondered if the man in your life is completely obsessed with you without you even realizing it? Picture this scenario. You're sitting across from him at a coffee shop while he casually tells you about his day, yet something fascinating happens during your conversation. His hand movements begin mirroring yours perfectly. His voice unconsciously matches your tone, and his eyes keep seeking yours as if maintaining some invisible connection between you both. What you're witnessing isn't coincidence, but rather the result of a deeply rooted psychological process that Sigmund Freud described over a century ago, where obsession doesn't reveal itself through grand gestures or dramatic declarations of love, but through the most subtle behavioral patterns emerging directly from his unconscious mind, patterns he cannot control himself. Learning to recognize these signals means getting a direct glimpse into his soul, understanding what's happening in his mind before he even knows it himself. So if you want to explore the secrets of human behavior further, subscribe to this channel, because what you're about to discover could forever change how you view relationships. The first warning sign appears in how he unconsciously becomes your mirror image without even noticing it happening. Imagine leaning back during conversation and watching him do exactly the same thing seconds later, crossing your arms, only to see him follow suit, changing your sitting position and witnessing him magically adjust as well. What looks like strange coincidence is actually one of the strongest signals of emotional obsession that psychoanalysis recognizes. Sigmund Freud described this phenomenon as unconscious identification, a process where the man's ego begins merging with yours, treating you not as a separate person but as part of himself, creating psychological fusion so profound it manifests in his physical movements before his conscious mind realizes what's happening. This mirroring extends far beyond simple body language into how he speaks when around you. Suddenly using words you frequently use, adopting your way of laughing, your speech melody, even your small linguistic quirks, not through conscious imitation, but his unconscious desperately trying to form unity with you. Freud recognized this identification becomes particularly strong when someone becomes emotionally dependent, unconsciously projecting his identity onto you because you've become a central component of his psychological balance, mirroring you, not to please you, but because his unconscious perceives you as part of himself. The smallest details become most revealing. Holding his coffee cup exactly like you do, breathing in the same rhythm, synchronizing hand movements as if guided by the same invisible choreography. These microscopic reflections represent the purest form of psychological fusion, happening completely outside his conscious will. What makes this signal so powerful is showing you've already penetrated deep into his unconscious mind, no longer just someone he likes or finds attractive, but a fundamental component around which his identity organizes itself, though caution is needed, because this unconscious mirroring can take obsessive turns when he starts copying not just your movements, but your interests, opinions, and life habits. Moving from healthy admiration towards psychological dependence that Freud warned could lead to complete loss of personal identity. Have you ever noticed someone unconsciously adopting your gestures or speaking style? Your answer could reveal how deep his obsession already runs, because what you'll learn next goes even further, showing itself in his eyes with silent messages almost nobody recognizes. The second signal reveals itself in his eyes and proves impossible to control, even for the most disciplined man. Picture entering a room where he's deep in conversation with others, yet his eyes automatically drift toward you repeatedly, as if an invisible magnet pulls his gaze back to you, pupils widening imperceptibly when looking at you, and even when trying to look elsewhere, his gaze returns within seconds. What you're observing is what Sigmund Freud called libidinal investment, an unconscious concentration of psychological energy on a specific object of desire, where his eyes become instruments of obsessive fixation rather than mere sensory organs. Pupil dilation becomes particularly telling, since the autonomic nervous system responds to intense emotional arousal completely uncontrollably, releasing adrenaline and dopamine when his pupils widen while looking at you, the same hormones activated during addiction and obsession that he cannot stop or consciously control. Notice how long his gazes last, since normal social interaction functions in 2 to 3 second glance cycles, while a man obsessed with you holds eye contact significantly longer without realizing it, his unconscious attempting to establish deeper connection through intense eye contact. A kind of psychological fusion through the eyes. Freud recognized that gaze represents one of the most primitive yet powerful tools of human psychology, becoming a vehicle for repressed longings and unconscious fantasies during obsession, where he doesn't stare because he's rude, but because his unconscious desperately tries absorbing you into himself, possessing you through the act of seeing. Most revealing moments occur when he believes himself unobserved, watching him in mirrors, through windows, or when he thinks you're distracted. These secret glances often prove more intense and longer than direct ones, because social inhibitions disappear. Another telling detail involves his eyes following your movements, even when seemingly occupied with something else, reading a book, talking on the phone, or working while peripheral vision remains fixated on you. This divided attention showing you've become a constant background presence in his consciousness. Psychoanalysis teaches us that extreme obsession can make his gaze take on photographic qualities, memorizing every movement, facial expression, and small gesture as if creating a mental album of your person. This obsessive visual collecting activity indicating you've occupied a permanent place in his unconscious mind. However, warning signs appear when his gazes shift from admiring to controlling, making you feel constantly watched and studied, transforming healthy attraction into unhealthy fixation, as Freud warned about scopophilic perversion, the pathological pleasure in looking that crosses boundaries into objectification. Have you noticed someone watching you even when they believe you don't see them? These silent observations are just the beginning, because what proves even more revealing are words that accidentally slip out, telling a completely different story than he wants to believe. The third signal hides in words that accidentally slip out, revealing what his unconscious betrays against his will. Imagine him telling you about his weekend and suddenly saying he went to the movies with his wife when you're both unmarried and he meant to say girlfriend, or casually mentioning our house when referring to his apartment where you've never spent the night. These seemingly harmless slips are anything but coincidental, representing direct messages from his unconscious mind. Freud revolutionized psychology by recognizing no accidental slips exist in language, with every mistake creating a window into the speaker's repressed desires and obsessive fantasies. So when he accidentally calls you names implying intimacy or possession, his unconscious reveals how far his mental obsession has progressed. Possessive pronouns that slip out prove particularly revealing when he speaks of my wife, my darling, or my love, despite your relationship status not justifying such designations. His unconscious already treating you as his possession, an inalienable part of his life. These linguistic appropriations showing he's already completely claimed you in his fantasies. Watch for temporal shifts in his language when discussing future plans as decided facts, saying, when we move in together, instead of, if we move in together, or our children will, rather than if we ever have children. These grammatical certainties revealing he's already constructed a shared future as inevitable reality in his mind. Freud observed that obsessive fixation makes the unconscious try adapting reality to fantasy linguistically, where the man begins speaking about you as if you already are what he wishes you were, his slips becoming unconscious incantations attempting to conjure desired reality into existence. Particularly revealing are his forgotten names when he confuses yours with an ex-partner's. Not because you're unimportant, but because his unconscious merges you with all important women in his life into one overwhelming female figure, making you a projection screen for all his romantic longings and fears simultaneously. Another telling detail appears in his Freudian slips, describing everyday situations, saying sleep instead of eat when inviting you to dinner, or speaking of being together in contexts meant for platonic activities. These sexually charged slips showing his thoughts permanently revolve around intimate fantasies, even during innocent conversations. Psychoanalysis teaches us that extreme obsession makes even denials revealing. When he suddenly says, "I don't think about you constantly," or "I'm not obsessed with you," articulating exactly what occupies his unconscious mind, since Freud recognized denial often represents the strongest confession. Pay special attention during moments when he's tired, stressed, or distracted, because conscious control mechanisms weaken in these states, allowing the unconscious to break through, unfiltered, his most honest words about you often emerging when he believes he's not listening properly or fully present. Have you noticed such accidental slips that revealed more than intended? These linguistic revelations are just the beginning, because what proves even more dangerous is how he projects his own obsession onto others while unconsciously revealing his deepest fears. The fourth signal shows itself in how he projects his own obsession onto others, while unconsciously revealing his deepest anxieties. Picture a harmless colleague greeting you friendly, and suddenly noticing him becoming suspicious, saying that guy looks at you strangely and thinks he likes you. What appears like normal jealousy is actually a complex psychological defense mechanism Freud identified as projection, seeing in other men what he feels himself, obsessive attraction toward you. Freud recognized people project their own repressed impulses and feelings onto others to avoid direct confrontation. So when he sees men everywhere supposedly after you, it reflects his own inner world, since he cannot imagine other men viewing you neutrally because he's incapable of doing so himself. These projections become especially clear in his descriptions of other people, interpreting harmless politeness as flirting attempts, friendly conversations as advances, and collegial cooperation as hidden conquest strategies. His obsessed unconscious, unable to imagine you could simply be a normal person to others. Notice how detailed his descriptions of other men's supposed intentions become, because the more precise his theories about their thoughts and motives, the more he reveals about his own, saying he probably thinks about what it would be like being with you all the time, describes exactly what occupies his own mind. Freud understood this projection form as an ego protection mechanism. Rather than admitting, "I'm obsessed with her," he externalizes this obsession, seeing it everywhere around him, temporarily relieving anxiety about his own intense feelings while strengthening his vigilance and possessive claims. It becomes particularly revealing when he starts helping by protecting you from these allegedly dangerous other men, offering to pick you up from events so you don't have to go alone, suggesting being present at certain social situations just for safety. These seemingly caring gestures actually being control attempts motivated by his projected jealousy. Psychoanalysis shows us that extreme obsession makes these projections increasingly irrational. Seeing threats where none exist, the friendly barista becomes a potential seducer, the polite neighbor becomes a stalker. Your entire social environment filtered through the lens of his own obsessive thoughts. A particularly dangerous sign appears when he starts questioning you about what did he say to you, or how did he look at you, these seemingly harmless questions attempting to validate his projections while gaining control over your social interactions, collecting evidence for his own fantasies. Freud warned about a particularly insidious form of this projection called retroactive jealousy, where suddenly even long-past relationships or friendships become problematic. Ex-partners who never played a role declared threats, old social media photos becoming occasions for intense discussions, his obsession expanding temporally to encompass your past as well. The perfidious aspect of these projections is they may contain grains of truth, since other people might indeed find you attractive. But a man obsessed with you exaggerates these possibilities grotesquely, interpreting every social interaction as potential threat to his imagined ownership rights. Have you experienced someone seeing rivalry and threats everywhere while you only perceived normal, harmless interactions? These projections represent just the tip of the iceberg, because what proves even more disturbing are the compulsive rituals and behavioral patterns he develops. Often without noticing, his entire life begins revolving around you. The fifth signal manifests in small rituals and habits he unconsciously develops around you, beginning to structure his entire life. Picture him texting you every morning at exactly the same time, driving the same route daily that happens to pass your workplace, visiting the cafe where you once met every week at the same time, even though you no longer go there. What superficially appears like coincidence or routine are actually compulsive rituals his unconscious created to maintain symbolic connection with you. Freud recognized that obsessive thoughts almost always lead to compulsive actions, the unconscious attempting to relieve unbearable tension of obsession through repetitive behaviors, these rituals becoming magical actions, as if their mere execution could establish or strengthen connection with you. Notice how systematically he connects certain places, times, or objects with you, wearing the shirt you once complimented suspiciously often, listening to music you like on repeat, frequenting restaurants, stores, or events you mentioned even when they don't match his normal tastes, his life beginning to structure itself around your preferences. Digital rituals prove particularly revealing when he's first to comment or like your social media posts, not occasionally but with regularity bordering on compulsion, saving screenshots of your photos, even the most mundane ones, remembering details from your posts with precision far exceeding normal interest. Freud understood such compulsive actions as unconscious attempts to gain control over uncontrollable situations. Since he cannot physically possess you, he develops symbolic possession rituals, collecting everything connected to you, including objects you've touched, places you've visited, people you know. A particularly revealing ritual appears in his communication behavior with you, either not responding immediately to your messages, but always waiting a specific time, as if imposing rules on himself, or conversely, always responding within minutes regardless of day or nighttime. These rigid communication patterns, showing normal, spontaneous interaction, replaced by compulsive structures. Notice his coincidences when he appears surprisingly often near you at your favorite supermarket, near your gym, in your neighborhood. These apparent coincidences often resulting from obsessive planning, where he studied your routines and adjusted his own to maximize chances of spontaneous encounters. Psychoanalysis shows us that extreme obsession can give these rituals almost religious quality, where certain objects become relics like the glass you drank from, the pen you used, even objects that were simply near you, treating these things with reverence completely disproportionate to their actual significance. Freud warned about the escalating nature of such compulsive actions. What begins as harmless habit can develop into a ritual system dominating his entire life, planning his day not according to his own needs, but according to possibilities for maintaining these symbolic connections with you. It becomes particularly disturbing when he starts involving you in these rituals, suggesting you should have your restaurant, your place, or your time, trying to establish shared habits that go beyond normal relationship building and already have territorial characteristics. Another telling sign appears in his reactions when these rituals get disrupted, responding disproportionately emotionally when you don't answer at the usual time, visit one of your places with someone else, or change your routine. his compulsive structures shaken, creating anxiety far beyond normal disappointment. Have you noticed someone organizing their life in small but systematic steps around you? These ritual patterns are just a preview of the final and perhaps most disturbing signal, because when an adult man begins regressing into childlike behavioral patterns, his obsession has reached a depth that even Freud considered concerning. The sixth and deepest signal shows itself when an adult man suddenly begins acting like a little boy, the ultimate form of emotional obsession. Picture this confident, successful man suddenly becoming helpless when you don't immediately respond to his messages, pouting like a child denied his favorite toy, constantly seeking your validation for smallest decisions, and becoming emotionally upset when you don't give him expected attention. What you're observing is psychological regression, a relapse into childlike behavioral patterns Freud identified as one of the strongest signs of deep emotional disturbance. Freud recognized that extreme emotional stress can cause adult ego collapse, reactivating earlier infantile developmental stages, where a man obsessed with you unconsciously returns to psychological patterns of earliest childhood, when mother was the almighty life-giving figure upon whom survival depended. Watch how he reacts when you're unavailable, since an adult man would show understanding or occupy himself otherwise, while a regressive man reacts with fear, anger, or desperation exactly like a child separated from his mother, unable to understand or accept that you might have other priorities, other people, or simply need time for yourself. Particularly revealing is his need for constant reassurance, repeatedly asking, "Do you still love me? Am I important to you? Do you think about me too?" These questions don't come from adult insecurity, but from childlike fear of abandonment, his inner child desperately seeking maternal assurance of being loved and not abandoned. Freud observed that regression often accompanies idealizing fantasies, where the man stops seeing you as a complex, independent person, but as the perfect, almighty mother figure of his childhood, expecting you to fulfill all his emotional needs, soothe his fears, and give him the unconditional love he needed as a child. A particularly disturbing sign appears in his behavior during conflicts or disagreements. Instead of communicating like an adult, he reacts with defiance, sulking, or emotional outbursts, staying hurt for days over trivial matters that an emotionally mature person would resolve through conversation. These reactions coming directly from childlike psychology, where every frustration feels like existential threat. Notice how he talks about you when you're not present, since regression makes him tend to idealize while wanting to possess you, describing you in exaggeratedly positive terms like, "She's perfect," or "She can do nothing wrong," while becoming jealous of every aspect of your life that doesn't belong to him. Psychoanalysis shows us this regression can have physical manifestations where he becomes more sickly, emotionally unstable, or develops psychosomatic symptoms when you're unavailable, his body reacting to your absence like a child's separation anxiety with genuine physical stress. Freud warned about dangers of this regression type because it makes healthy relationships impossible, no longer seeing you as a partner, but as mother substitute, where your own needs, desires, and boundaries become irrelevant because his inner child only perceives his own existential fears. Another alarming sign is his inability to be alone, since an adult can tolerate loneliness and occupy themselves, while a regressive man panics when too long without contact with you, bombarding you with messages, calling constantly, or showing up unannounced, not from romantic longing, but from childlike abandonment fear. The most dangerous form of this regression shows in his handling of your autonomy, unable to understand why you want to make your own decisions, spend time with other people, or not be constantly available to him. Because for his regressive unconscious, you're the almighty mother who must always be there, experiencing every assertion of your independence as betrayal. Have you experienced an adult man suddenly reacting like a needy child when you didn't immediately fulfill all his emotional needs? This regression represents the deepest and most disturbing of all signals, because it shows his obsession has altered his fundamental psychological structure, requiring professional help, while you must understand you're neither the cause nor solution to his psychological problems. Freud taught us a fundamental truth that the unconscious knows no lies. While the conscious mind can deceive, hide, and manipulate, the unconscious always speaks naked truth about our deepest desires and fears. These signals are more than psychological curiosities. They're keys to deeper understanding of human connections, showing you not only what he feels, but why he acts as he does. The fascinating part is you also send these signals without knowing it. Your unconscious constantly communicating with the world around you, the only question being whether you're ready to understand this language. What hidden truth in your own unconscious could change your life if you had courage to recognize it? Comment below which country you're from, because I'm curious about our international community of people wanting deeper understanding. And if this video changed your perspective on interpersonal communication, leave a like and subscribe for more insights into secrets of human psychology. Sharing this video with someone who needs to know these signals, because knowledge about the unconscious is a gift that can change lives.